Just so I have a sense, I mean, I read the names of who's here, companies, et cetera, et cetera. How many, just so I know where people are, so all of you work for big marketers, major marketers, right? Who's the major marketers? Yeah? Wait, there's not, that's it? Aren't you, where do you work? Who's from agencies? Okay, oh, okay, that was, okay, got it. I'm going to say, Jesus, a little light. Okay, good. And is everybody from a media perspective too? Media sort of intelligent, I guess? Media buying, planning? No? Some? Okay. Some of you. Okay, one guy. That's good. Okay. I guess that's about as good as it's going to get then. In that case, I'm going to talk about the election. Who's voting for Donald Trump? Just want to make sure nobody's willing to admit that. That's all I'm really checking. I just wanted to make sure. Yes, you're in Democrat land. Even though he lives here, we don't back him. Listen, just very quickly for the MMA, we're a trade group, nonprofit trade association. We're probably the new guys in the block. You know, if you compare us to like the ANA, which has been around for 100 years, versus the MMA, which is, we barely made it through 10. It was a bit of a turnaround. In fact, the history of the MMA is that we originally focused on ringtones. That was the medium of the future. And so we've let that go. The board brought me in about 5 years ago. We turned around a financially distressed organization, have tilted this thing really big at marketers, and now it's all about supporting marketers in mobile. That's fundamentally what the organization is about. And it's complicated. It's hard. It's a pain in the ass. It's not, as somebody said to me once, it's not just the internet, but smaller. There's something more going on with mobile. And in fact, those of you who, how many of you are active involved in media, mobile media, marketing, planning, buying, any of that kind? Just because, okay, so some expertise in the room. Okay, good. So listen, on the left are the marketers, on the right are all the many of the solution providers that make up the MMA. We do everything from text messaging all the way through to advertising. And sort of a lot of stuff in between. And like I said, that mission is about helping them. Sometimes just the best way to understand a board, though, or a trade group, if you ever faced with having to do that yourselves, is really to understand the board and its governance. And so my chairman is John Costello, the CMO of Dunkin' Brands. My executive committee, my executive committee was there. My executive committee, you know, Unilever, Louise DeComo, Unilever, Sanjay Gupta at Allstate. You know, and a bunch of other sort of companies. Weather Company in there, certainly important to us. Facebook, I hear they're big in mobile, right? They do a lot, yeah. They've had a good run, I think we'd say, right? What's that, 0 to 20 billion in less than 5 years? Yeah, not bad at all. And the rest of the board sort of makes it up. But here's what I wanted to share with you today. I did want to give some context, because I know this is all, you're all research-oriented. A lot of you really like research, yeah? Only Joel put his hand up bravely. That's good. 2 hands. 2 hands. There you go. Right. There you go. Listen, I thought maybe I'd give some context to sort of mobile, just how the MMA looks at that, some positioning work we did with Jim Stingo a couple years ago. It gives context, and then I want to talk a little bit about what do you do to capture value around this channel, which is specifically getting into, oh, and I see I left a slide from before. I did this presentation for GM recently. That's why they're on there. Obviously, I didn't look at my slides carefully. But then I want to talk a little bit about sort of the SMOX research that we've had the pleasure of working with Marketing Evolution and executing. So let me ask this one. How many, so of the marketers, even the agencies, how many of you think you could measure mobile in a marketing mix today? Like through, you know, marketing mix modeling or any of those other ones? Wait, one hand, really? And then he put it down really fast. Oh, because you're doing it with Marketing Evolution, right, yeah. That's actually it. You can't measure mobile in a marketing mix. I've asked 50 major CMOs in the last year, and not a single one of them said yes. In fact, they kind of looked at me quizzically like it was an important question, which struck me as odd at some level. And yet nobody, Nielsen, Comscore, Marketing Mix Analytics, the other MMA, the other third MMA, I guess, versus the mixed martial arts people. I don't know who else is, Market Share Partners. I mean, I don't know who else is out there. None of them can measure mobile in a marketing mix. Millward Brown, they said they could. They never proved it to me, so I suspect they can't. But nobody can do that. So the single greatest revolution in consumers' media habits is completely unmeasured. Seems funny, doesn't it? So I'm not sure exactly why that got by the industry or how that's happened, but it's clearly the state of where we are today. So when we talk about mobile, we talk about it from a brand opportunity. I'm going to share that with you here a little bit. And then I'm going to talk again about SMOX from an actual media understanding. Oh, I see some of these slides are a little out of order. I already said that. So, Jack Welch made, I thought, was one of the best quotes ever. there are really two sources of competitive advantage. Only two, he said specifically. One is the ability to know something about our consumers faster than our competition. And the second one, and super important, is act against it. In fact, one of the favorite phrases I have, if you have 3 frogs on a log and 2 of them decide to jump off, how many frogs are on the log? Well, most people say 1. No, it's 3. They made a decision to jump. They didn't goddamn jump. So that's the issue. At some fundamental level, we get it, right? I'm sorry, I'm naked up here without my phone. So at some level, we understand the importance of this device, right? I caught myself walking across 42nd Street here at 5th Avenue a couple weeks back, like this. I'm in the middle of a crosswalk at the center of the universe. That's how New Yorkers think of it. Center of the universe, pay no attention to what's going on around me, because that's the grip that this device has on us. And yet, it's completely unmeasured. And within that, I mean, listen, what are your other options as a marketer, right? I mean, you could create huge new distributions. You could open a new country. We're a global organization. I deal with a lot of other countries. That's very hard, you know. We could create a brand new product, but we'd have to go through a whole process, years, and trying to figure that out, tool up, produce it, get it out there. Maybe it's a new service, a little bit easier, I guess, some level. What are the opportunities for creating competitive advantage? I mean, they all require capital X, right? They're all huge expenditures and huge risks. And yet, I would argue that maybe the greatest competitive opportunity has been dropped right in our laps because of just consumer shift in behavior and change. And yet marketers have been incredibly slow to jump on that opportunity, in our experience. Marketers today spend around 3 to 5% of their total budgets. And if you look at some of the advantage of the channel itself, you know, right? We all know, right? It's personal. Generally, there's 1 phone per person. There's a high attention. I'll make a point on that here in a minute. Do you all know you check your phones 150 times a day on average? How many of you think that's light? 80% of you look at your phone. It's the last thing you do at night or the first thing in the morning, even relative to your significant other. Right? Allegedly, 70%, not this room, others, use it in the bathroom. Right? It's become pervasive to us. Like, I don't even want to stand on stage. In fact, it kills me to know that it just beeped and I can't look at it right now, standing in front of you. Right? That's the grip that it has. Whoops. Oh, that wasn't good. Okay. Also, too, it captures a whole series of new moments and new opportunities. We're going through a rethink of measurement right now, and it occurred to us in the middle of this project the other day, is that marketers are focused on using click-through as a measurement tool, dopey, right? We all agree? Click-through, dopey, right? And yet, why aren't they measuring things like a test drive? Because we could do that with a phone. We know the person showed up at a car dealership. We know that for a fact. We also know that they stayed there for some period of time, left, and came back. That sounds like a test drive. I could measure a test drive. That's having launched a business, Cars.com, a number of years ago, that's a much better precursor to a sale than anything else. Oh, sorry, that really is an annoying button. I'll try to stop doing that. And also, too, it is the way that we connect to the world. How many of you have teenagers at home? How many of you have ever tried to take their phone away to much regret? Yeah, exactly. It is integral to their lives. It's everything, right? You look at a service like a Snapchat, for example, right? I mean, none of you probably really use Snapchat. I do with my kids. If I was to do it here, they would respond to me in 30 seconds. It's the only way I can get a response from them immediately. Because for them, it's their way of connecting with everybody we know. I have a daughter. She's 16. Snapchat's 4 years old. She has a Snap score, which means it's the snaps she sent and then received. You get 1 for sending, 1 for getting a Snapchat back, right? Her score is 270,000. So who's good in math? It's about 200, 250 a day. Every day for 4 years, on average. That's a lot of connecting to other people. That has real relevance to her. And it's not just that. In fact, many people, I was at a conference yesterday, they all talked about this is a year of chat, right? Between WeChat and Snapchat and a myriad of other things are going on out there. Pretty important. Now, so, mobile's got a lot of these different advantages, has a lot of these opportunities. How do we begin to kind of assess some of that opportunity? I kind of like this video. Let me see if I can play this here. I like this video as a way to capture some of what mobile can do for us. Good.
I can watch live TV on my new Spring phone.
That's good.
Well, my Spring phone has TV and it downloads music.
I can check email.
I have that. And crime's deterrent.
What?
Try and take my wallet.
How many of you have crime deterrent on your phone? Yes? Many of you? Very good. This is just a little extra tip from the MMA. I think it's the other MMA. So listen, as I mentioned, we hired Jim Stingle a couple of years ago to define what does mobile mean to you as a marketer. And what Jim, using the Procter & Gamble positioning process, came back and said, it's the closest you can get to your consumer. So I have a really fundamental question for you. How many of you, marketers, agencies, on behalf of your clients, think that getting closer to your consumer is important? Everybody, right? How many of you think you're doing well? Yeah. I mean, in fact, it might be the most important thing you could do. A closer relationship. And what it means to me on my phone, right, is do you sit on my first or second screen? Are you that important that your brand on a daily basis is what I look at 150 times? A reporter asked me recently, what's the value of investing in an app? It's a really good question, and we hope to measure it as part of our cross-media research that we're doing with Marketing Evolution. I haven't figured out yet to do that, but we will at some point. And I said, I think it's one of those, it's like a MasterCard thing, it's priceless. Like you cannot spend enough to build a great service relationship with a consumer. That should be fundamental in the way we look at our relationship to consumers, as a marketer's relationship to consumers. In fact, this video, let me see, can I just play it from here? This one doesn't have sound to it. Let me see here. I can't really see. This one sort of captures some of that idea I mentioned earlier. Let me see if that'll work. Oh, there we go. Some of the idea I mentioned earlier about the grip that it has on us as people. And so you ask yourself, because it's a fundamental question as we look at advertising effectiveness, right? When it has that kind of grip, what's its ad effectiveness? Right? Now, what's funny about this is that I know the backstory to this. He works there. He knew where the pool was. But yet he was so consumed with that relationship, right, he just keeps on going. Yeah. So he's so consumed with whatever he's doing at that moment because of his device. I mean, listen, people don't have that relationship with TV. They don't have the relationship with magazines. They don't have the relationship with the radio. Newspapers? Really? None of it. This device changes everything. And so you have to ask yourself, back to Jack Welch's original point, what's the value of that closer relationship? What's the value of that competitive relationship? And by the way, the really unfortunate news is it's not going to last. There's a fleeting moment right now that that opportunity exists and then it's going to go away. Because pretty soon, every one of you are going to have a very solid mobile strategy. You don't today, but you will pretty soon. So about 3 years ago, I went and talked to the board, and I said, listen, if you don't fundamentally explain the ROI of anything new to any company, let alone marketers, then you will never be a very big industry. Just the nature of the beast. You have to explain ROI. It's one of the reasons Google became such a powerful business, because they just focus on ROI very simply and clearly, right? And now Google is a part of everybody's marketing plan. It's a line item that sits there. People feel that way about TV, although a little more complicated in its analysis. But I said for the mobile industry, I said, you really do need to figure this out. And marketers need to know this information because they need to make decisions. I was just talking to Joel actually earlier. He made a really good point. He said, he says, if you don't have facts, then it's death by incrementalism. You do, we'll just spend 10% more next year, 10% the year after that. But that's not competitive advantage. That's just being safe. Maybe dopey, but safe at least. Because you're missing the real opportunity that exists by consumers who have radically changed their habits. So we set out, we raised a couple $1 million to go do research, to build a methodology with Marketing Evolution. We identified 5 brands who would do studies with us, public studies. They had to put their name behind it. They all wrote checks. So I raised money from the sales side who had a vested interest in seeing people get the data, get the data. But we made the marketers pay too. Okay, it was really important. So nobody skated by for free. They had to be serious and involved. Some of them paid a lot more because in the case of Coca-Cola, they did studies all around the world. In fact, we've done studies now in 4 countries. I have data from at least US and then 2 others. Don't have data from the UK yet. And fundamentally, all we wanted to know was, does mobile work in a purchase funnel? Does it build brand awareness? Does it build brand image? Does it build purchase intent? Store traffic, even in the case of Walmart? Or ultimately, does it drive sales? These are those campaigns, just so you can see what we were measuring against. We wanted to see the value of TV and radio and magazines and FSIs, and a couple people did cinema, and social certainly was a part of it, although it's hard to know. Social, it's kind of, I always find this slide a little funny. Social's outside of mobile. I think it really should be inside of mobile, but whatever. And then also there was mobile social specifically that was targeted within the campaign. But we had multimedia campaigns. I think they ranged, I don't know who from ME here knows all the campaigns, but they ranged anywhere from probably $10 million campaigns. I don't know what's the biggest one, probably 30, 40 million, I think, was probably the biggest campaign so far. And the results of those studies, identified on this chart, a little hard to see from the back. I apologize to some of you. I'll just kind of give you a summary of the data. We look at the individual campaign, their objectives, and we look at what is the optimized level of mobile in the marketing mix. So if we employ the marketing evolution approach to optimize for maximum campaign impact, we see that that ranges from about 8% upwards of 16% in the mix. AT&T should be 16%. Interesting enough, anybody from AT&T here? Okay, good. So AT&T started with 1% in the mix. A mobile company started targeting consumers who might buy a phone 1% mobile. That made sense to them. Now listen, I'm not really here to pick on AT&T except that it got it to chuckle I was looking for, but the point there is really more so just how hard this is for brands, right? It's a challenge to create change in organizations. That's the hard part, and yet it's all what we're going to look back on and think we had success is creating change, and yet it's the challenge that we're up against. So optimized level was 8 to 16%, and it produced an increase in brand or sales from 4% upwards of 12%. 12% is the highest on, in this case, awareness for AT&T around the Moto X phone was the campaign, and 4% increase in sales for Coca-Cola Gold Peak in the US. Now, what's interesting about that is that's when we did mobile like the marketers thought we should do mobile. And I'll even pick on some, anybody from Coca-Cola here? Oh, this is really fun, good. So in Coca-Cola, the Gold Peak Tea campaign, they ran one ad everywhere. We went back to them, we says, so you kind of ran the most personal, most targeted media like it was a TV campaign. And they were like, we shouldn't have done that. Hadn't really occurred to them. We said, well, I think it's Gold Peak Tea. It's probably a particular psychographic that would drink that. We could identify that by neighborhoods. We could have done a huge amount of location targeted. We could have tied it back to availability of the product in store, which we did later on for Magnum, by the way, for Unilever. There's a myriad of things. We could have targeted on weather, which we also did for Magnum, interesting enough. So there's many things we could have done that would have boosted performance. We just took what you had. When we go back, though, of the things that they did, and we just did, you know, what marketing evolution's approach is to optimize those campaigns, we saw a whole different world when we really made mobile work hard, when we made it work best, when we make it work right, which was specifically that mobile should be 15% to 20% in the mix today. So a channel that in some regards is really not much older than 5, 6 years old, Facebook age in some regards, I guess, maybe we put it that way, is now suddenly 15 to 20% of the mix. So if you're not there, you're missing that competitive opportunity that exists right now today that won't last. If you're Coke, when Pepsi does it, you're just a parody. No more, advantage is gone. You could have captured sales for years because we know how slow it is for others to move. And by the way, the increase in brand metrics is upwards of almost 20%. You can see it up there, 18 to 17%. And in the case of sales, we see increases from 7% upwards to 15%. In fact, 15% has become the norm. So are you really 100% clear on what I've just said there? We got a campaign, $10 million in the mix, no mobile, $10 million in the mix over here with mobile, 15% increase in sales. So I go to CMOs, I say, what's your plan to increase sales 15%? What's your plan? Because I got one. And by the way, mine's proven. Yours is all going to be speculation and hope, maybe, I suspect, right? Or it's going to require CapEx or other things to get there. This is the opportunity that's been presented to us by mobile that's challenged for us to get to. So, summary, 12 to 20%. We know it increases sales 7 to 16%. Now, where this gets interesting, though, as I mentioned, you know, it's not just optimizing mobile in the mix relative to other options, but it's also then all the elements of mobile, because mobile is complicated, right? There's mobile video, mobile audio, mobile social, mobile native, et cetera, right? And as I look back at some of the campaigns, and I just pulled out some nuggets here, in the case of awareness for Gold Peak Tea, which was one of their objectives, is that we found that by 2 to even 3x, mobile was more cost-effective. Why wouldn't you have just invested huge in mobile just knowing that? And yet they didn't have the tools to do it. So I get it. If we look at store traffic driving, where it gets a little more complicated, right? We're trying to get closer to the consumer and understand their need state or the opportunity that's presented at that moment. This is again where mobile gets a little hard. So I want to admit that, but the opportunities certainly should still drive us towards that. We find that when we ran the smaller ad, this is a rich media version of that smaller pencil ad that's at the bottom of the screen, and we combined it to those who'd been to a Walmart before, we saw no lift whatsoever in store traffic. But when we took and we ran a larger ad that said the store is 1.9 miles away, or, well, in this case here was expandable ad, but here was retargeting, or here it was that smaller ad, but also using a proximity. Now we know they're close to the store, right? We see some lift. But watch what happens when we figure out we combine that larger mobile ad that says you're 1.9 miles from the store or whatever, right? That's personally rich media targeted to you and is targeting people who are close to the store, not retargeted, but proximity. We see a 40% increase in store traffic. Is store traffic important to retailers? We don't get them in the store, we don't sell them, right? That's the first step in the process. And then we look at things as we did here around, we did a study, it's not up there, the brand wasn't up there. We did some early data polls and testing the systems. We never released a study because there was funkiness with the data, but we did pull out this. It was for, actually, was there anybody here from a QSR? Anybody here from Subway? Okay, good. So it was Subway, just between us. And I'm just giving away all the secrets today, aren't I? Right? So it was Subway, and we found that if you targeted day of the week, you could see some increase in performance. That there were different days that I might be interested in a Subway sandwich than other days. But most interesting, when I targeted the ads, as I could only do on a mobile phone, right? I can't do this in daytime television. I guess radio I maybe could. Internet you could get in office, I guess. But if I targeted 11 to 1, what do you think the performance of that ad was? Because remember now, it's looked at me, I just saw 3x here. Actually, it was 13x. This is the opportunity to mobile. It's finding that unique new thing that this does because of the different relationship that I as a consumer have to it as matters to your brand. I don't think there's going to be a generic kind of impression around it. I think it's going to be, unfortunately, unique to sectors, maybe even to individual brands, by the way. And Magnum, the study we haven't released yet, interesting enough, we found, as I sort of referenced earlier here, that we took a display ad that if the average of the campaign was 100 index, and if we took that display ad really did 0. I mean, really, it did nothing. It did nothing. I hate to admit that, but a display ad was absolutely 0. But we don't see that in every case. This is a little bit rare. But when we added weather data on it, because it's ice cream product, ice cream novelty bar, right? We see a 50% better ROI against sales than we did on the average of the campaign. So what's happening now is it's not just a media channel. We're really having to fundamentally understand our consumer need state and be responsive to that opportunity. And again, back to Jack Welch, the faster we do that, the better off that we are. And more we see around social, we see the same kind of thing. Social has the same kind of performance. So again, we see all these opportunities. Oh, actually, I do want to mention this one. This one's closer to my face, right? My team told me not to put that. Kicks TV's ass, because it does. These are the curves from Marketing Evolution around the performance of mobile video relative to TV. Out on the right, where you see the cable TV label, that's about 12 to 15 frequency. The bend in the curve on mobile video is about 2 to 3. Basically, mobile cues its effectiveness immediately. Immediately. And you think about it, somebody put it best to me in an event the other day. They said, yeah, sure, I pay attention to the ad, right? I'm looking at the timer in the lower left-hand corner waiting for the stupid ad to end. But that was their recognition. Like they even could repeat back their experience, right? They knew exactly what they were doing. That's what this does. And again, those of you who put your hands up for teenagers, this is the only way they're watching media anymore, right? They don't do it in big screen TVs. I have them in all the kids' rooms. They don't watch them at all. Yeah, you want to ask a question? Yeah, sure.
Apropos kids, do you know or can you share what the demos are of the predominant
Yeah.
mobile responder? That
Yeah.
reported?
So most of the campaigns, they were pretty broad. I don't know the specifics, or anybody from Marketing Evolution who wants to jump in, but as a general rule, all of these audiences were 18 to 49. You know, they were no young. Your question, though, is a great question. I would love to see the media mix against 13 to, 24-year-olds. Yeah, it could be revolutionary. Serge, you want to say?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, we don't have that, but there's actually an interesting enough case where we had a target with MasterCard that was older, and mobile still was a high portion in the mix. The penetration of smartphones was lower among the, I think it was 45 to 65 audience, but the ones that had it was still incredibly effective. It just has a lower penetration.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, we've gone back and broken down the data to look at audience segments within the campaigns, and we haven't seen anything really dramatic by ages. Is that right? Yeah. But I'd like to do a very, teen-centric kind of campaign. So if you're a marketer who has a teen audience and would like to do another SMOC study, we'd love to know about that. So listen, I think you get the idea here, right? Mobile's an opportunity. It does exist. It is here, right here and now. I think I've got one more. I do have one more in here. It does exist right here and now. And that there's really, now we have enough pattern recognition. I certainly had people say to me like, oh, I don't really know. It's not my sector. I get that, right? But that's the nature of business. You never have perfect information because by the time you do, everybody's got it, and then you no longer have competitive advantage. That's the whole thing. It exists right now today. I will mention one other crazy thing that we did too, and you didn't see it on the earlier ones. We actually did do the study for Coca-Cola in Brazil. They funded all the studies around the world, which is very interesting. They made probably a $500,000 commitment. It's pretty serious on their part to do that. Interesting in Brazil, where mobile penetration is only 25% of total pop. In the US, it's about 60% now of total pop, not of those who have phones, but 60% of total population. We did the studies when we were around 50% total population, just so you have a frame of reference there. But even in Brazil, where mobile population, smartphone penetration, by the way, is 25%, the optimized level of mobile there was 19%. And by the way, I don't know if Marketing Evolution is even, we don't believe you. Do you know this? Have we told you this? We don't believe it. We really just don't believe it. But I'm going to show you the data anyway. You're going to make what you want of it. It was a 60% increase. Off the charts. Not like anything we've seen. It's either an anomaly in the data. I'm not criticizing the analysis there, by the way, because we did check it 10 times. I know that, just to be clear. But it's so crazy. It's so crazy, we don't know. But again, it sort of says, well, maybe we're undervaluing the opportunity. Maybe it's even bigger than we think. And what happens when smartphone penetration in Brazil goes to 75 or 85%? Then what does it mean? So, I mentioned it with some caveats because I'm not just here to promote mobile. I'm actually here to promote success. Go ahead.
I think you need to compare the demographic statistics of the population of Brazil and their economic statutes.
It's a very good point.
Compared with those folks that own mobile, because those numbers may actually be correct.
Yeah, fair point. That's actually that's very insightful, very smart. The only thing we could come up with is that maybe it's either there's such a disparity in income that it's such a concentration of either youth or wealth that it overrides that. But it was just Coca-Cola, so it doesn't feel like it was that big of a deal. But nonetheless, I think your point's a good one. Yeah. So listen, that's really the fundamental point. I won't take you through the MMA and kind of what we do for members. I just will mention, as I said, that there is an opportunity right now today to take advantage of this. That's part of what the MMA is doing. We appreciate Marketing Evolution's support around this and the marketers' help around sort of doing these studies. We are in the process of doing a wave 2. So I think part of my pitch is to say that if you are a major marketer and you fit into a series of categories that we're looking for, automotive, there's a couple other things. We'd love to do beer or alcohol of some kind. We haven't done that versus Coca-Cola. We'd love to do youth product. I know farmers on the category. I don't know, there's a couple other categories out there that we'd like to do. I have to think through what those are. But if you're a marketer who's interested, we pay for the bulk of the cost of a study. You got to go public with the data and help. You got to work in the consortium and then at least release a part of it. But you see what that is. None of it's competitive. We'd love to do that with you because, again, it's fundamentally the mission of the MMA is to help sort of educate the marketplace and lead us. And what we're going to do this next time, because we don't have good data around this yet, is we got now mobile relative to TV, radio, magazines. We need to really get in and break apart, what's the value of mobile video, what's the value of mobile audio, what are all those components, how we build that mix within there, because as I mentioned, we're finding that to be almost as powerful. The one thing I'd leave you with is around video itself. As I mentioned, just to make super clear, you saw the graph. Basically what it says is that mobile video is priced at about 50% of its real value. It is the deal of the decade right now. Buy as much mobile video as you can, buy long-term contracts into mobile video if you can, get as much as you can, because that's the opportunity that exists, because eventually you all know it and you all buy into it, prices will go up and that opportunity won't exist anymore. So listen, I'm happy to take some questions, or hope that's helpful to everybody. Go.
The ads optimized for mobile, or there's just take TV ads and slap them on, or print ad and slap them on the phone?
It's a good question. If you heard it there, he said, do we just slap a TV ad into video? In some cases we did, which we actually like, because it eliminated creativity, eliminated creative as a variable in it, right? So in some cases, I think the example I showed, I didn't look, was that Walmart or Coke did that. I don't think Walmart did. I think they did an iteration of it. We would be strong advocates of multiple creatives, maybe rich media, altered in some regards, more personally targeted, that kind of thing, is sort of a higher performance level. But yeah, it's a good question. And shorter, yeah. We're going to do some more, right? There's a giant learning agenda that we have in this next round, which is we want to see 30s, 15s, and 7s, and see if we can start to see some patterns around some of that. Other questions for people? Are you all excited to go do mobile now? Yeah. Well, good. Well, I'm not going to hold you up, and we'll let you go do that. Thanks, everybody. Hopefully helpful to you.